Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to NOLA Theater Talk. My name is Alan Smason, and you'll be able to watch all of what we do throughout the night on the NOLA Theater Folk Facebook group, on the theatercriticism.com Facebook page, and my own YouTube channel, which you can check out there as well. Again, appreciate you being with me tonight. Tonight, a little bit of a deviation, not so far dealing with theater, although there's some wonderful theater right now that's on the boards, and I should mention right off that the NOLA project, a joint production with the African American Museum, is presenting Passover for the next 3 weeks, or at least for the next 2 weeks beyond this, until I think November the 9th. The weekend also opened the show for the first of 2 weekends for Jekyll and Hyde over at the Jefferson Performing Arts Center on Airline Drive. And the Toxic Avenger also opened this weekend until I think November the 10th at Rivertown Theaters. Whenever it is, if it's the 9th or the 10th, whatever, it may go further than that. It maybe till the 14th or 15th, but go check it out. That's fun too. Gary Rucker directing that. But of all the shows, obviously the most impressive, the one that's the biggest, one with the most moving parts in terms of Jekyll and Hyde, I recommend that very highly. There's only one weekend left to see it, and only Friday, Saturday, and Sunday performances left. So go check that out. We'll be able to talk about that later. But coming up in November, I have to tell you that we are very blessed to have the New Orleans Opera present Samson et Dalila, which is, of course, the Samson and Dalila opera that premiered here in New Orleans back in 1893 at the French Opera House. And it was the North American premiere of that opera. And again, the New Orleans Opera Association is presenting a concert version of that opera, which means that they're going to have the actors on stage working with the live orchestra, the LPO, but they're not going to necessarily have the giant settings and all of the different costumes. Some of the actors may be in costume or something like that. Not going to be as elaborate as it would be if it were a full-blown production. And of course, I'm sure that some of the reasons that they're doing that are many, some of which is, the actual cost of mounting a large production like that. But this is a particular work by Camille Saint-Säens that has actually lent itself to concert versions before, so it's not that unusual. And I would recommend to everybody who gets a chance. There are going to be two opportunities to see it on November the 8th, evening performance, and on November the 10th, a Sunday afternoon performance. And while we don't have the Samson in our conversation tonight, we are very blessed to have the mezzo-soprano who will be filling in the part of Dalila, if you will, and the eminent, qualified, wonderful voice that some of you may have heard last Tuesday at the New Orleans Opera Guild. But I would like to welcome to the show Raehann Bryce-Davis. And congratulations, we got you in there. And again, you've been to New Orleans before at all, or is this the first time you've been here?
That was my first time, my very first, and fortunately it won't be the last, since I'm coming right back as soon as I'm done with this contract here in Houston.
Tell me a little bit about where you started, because I know that your mother had roots in Jamaica, and that I believe that Texas is sort of your erstwhile home, but you also call some of the ports of call, if you will, in Europe as well at home for a good bit of the year too. So tell me a little about where you started and how you got exposed to opera to begin with. Sure.
So my family is originally from Jamaica, and I popped out while they were studying in Mexico. So we moved around quite a bit. My sisters were born in Canada. We're just Team North America in general. And we landed in North Texas. So from the time I was 10, I lived in North Texas until I headed off for grad school and things.
So are you now officially out of Houston? Is that the area that you're most associated with, or Dallas?
So currently I am a vagabond in the wind. 50% of my career is in America and 50% of it is in Europe. I literally don't have a base at all. It's just that currently I'm singing in a show in Houston. So that's why I'm speaking to you from Houston.
Well, that's okay. I mean, we're glad that you're doing so well that you can do that. And I appreciate your being able to do this because, it was not that long ago. As I said, last Tuesday night, less than a week ago, you were doing the Hearts on Fire at the Opera Guild House. And you did a full program of William Walton, some gospel. Your mom even was called up to perform some Jamaican and I think maybe like a spiritual type of thing that she was doing. And yeah, I mean, you ended up with Rodgers and Hammerstein when You Never Walk Alone from Carousel. So you did the whole gamut. I mean, in terms of and of course, Lieder, a lot of German Lieder, which again is not usually done. Here in New Orleans, although we love Lieder, we love to hear it when it's done well. But I'm assuming that you must have been exposed to all of this at a relatively young age.
I was. I was always in choirs when I was young, and that's one of the great things is that you're exposed to so much music from so many different places in choir. I was also in orchestra and band. So I had lots of classical influences as I was coming up. And my mom was a music teacher. So as she was learning music to teach her classes, I was, learning all of that by osmosis as well. So I've always had a rich heritage of music pouring through the Bryce household speakers.
Was there one particular incident you remember, one particular exposure to opera where you said, wait, this is not like gospel, this is different, and I'm intrigued by this? Is there something you remember?
Yeah, so I in the summers my mom went back to school to study at the University of Texas at Arlington to get a music degree, and I, according to her, was not young enough or was not old enough to be home by myself, so she would drag me along with her. And so I would sit in the fine arts library at the school, and the only thing there were musicals. So I must have watched West Side Story about 50 times and Phantom of the Opera and all of these different shows. And I liked the theater of it, but I also liked these beautiful classical voices. So it was in the days of like Napster when you would go and download music online. And so I had found this group called Amici Forever, which would sing opera arias, but with like a little underneath it.
Little beatbox opera.
So I was listening to them. I was downloading one of their tracks, and then I saw that somebody else sang the same track on there, and it was Olga Borodina. And I'm like, I don't know who that person is. Who is that? So I downloaded it, and then as soon as the sound came out of my speakers, I just felt like I started melting. I had goosebumps. I felt it so deeply. And I was like, what is that? How does she do that? And that was when I truly fell in love.
So now, were you always gearing towards a mezzo, or were you gearing towards any other type of?
No, I was planning on singing Carlotta, the very highest coloratura. When I was in college, my mom encouraged me to just go take some voice lessons. I was a business major. I wasn't planning on studying music, but I went in, and as soon as I started singing, I was like, yeah, I'd really love to sing like Carlotta on Broadway. And she's like, honey, you're a mezzo.
Yeah, but Carmen, I mean, Amneris, right? There are some incredible roles for mezzo. So you shouldn't put it down so much, because there's some wonderful roles there, even if you're not able to be Carlotta. I'm sorry about that. So just to let you know, we're going to talk a little bit about recordings because of my family's history with Smith's Records and that, et cetera. But I wanted to first find out what you brought in the room. I'm going to tell you what I brought first. This is, believe it or not, It's not a Sazerac, although it's in a Sazerac glass. This is actually a Vieux Carré. I did that because you're doing a French opera, that was premiered at the French Opera House. I'm wearing a Degas tie. I'm trying to go real French tonight. So in case you don't know, a Vieux Carré is a famous New Orleans cocktail, not the Sazerac, which is its famous cousin, the earlier precursor to this. A Vieux Carré is made with about 3/4 of an ounce of rye whiskey, about 3/4 of an ounce of cognac, good French cognac, and then you add about a half of an ounce of a Benedictine, to which you add 2 or 3 dashes each of Angostura and the Peychaud bitters, which are the red bitters that we prefer here in New Orleans. And you stir it and then strain it into a glass with more ice and garnish it with a cherry. I have a very nice Luxardo cherry in here as well. So cheers to you. What did you bring in, Raehann?
Well, that sounds delicious. And you were a bit more thoughtful than I was. I just grabbed a drink that I like drinking. So I had some Chinese for dinner. So I grabbed my very favorite. Where's the camera?
There it is.
Some taro milk tea.
With the bubbles.
With the bubbles.
Yes.
So here goes my.
Right, well, you enjoy that through the night. We're gonna get into it. So again, you were exposed to some of the Broadway show tunes and then eventually heard the opera. What role was it that really you mentioned the first one there, but what role was it that when you were learning to do roles was your go-to role for the beginning? I mean, was it something like Carmen, or was it something different?
Oddly enough, I young me that didn't know the business at all, I thought I was going to be a professional Dalila. So my family is very God-fearing, and theater and the church, sometimes there can be disagreements between the two, especially from the more conservative branches. And so I was like, I can sing a Christian opera. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. Just whenever there's a Samson and Dalila, I'm going to be the Dalila. So I learned all 3 arias from the show because, I'm getting ready for my professional career as Dalila. And then finally I said this to someone and they were like, honey, but no one performs that opera. I killed my hopes and dreams of being a professional Dalila until now, when finally I am asked to utilize the 3 arias that I have known since I was 19 years old.
and of course, I should mention New Orleans has not only had the premiere of it, but if you know anything about the history of New Orleans opera, I'm going to see if I can bring this up. Do you remember ever seeing this? The Risa Stevens, Samson and Dalila with Simone Venet. This was done at the New Orleans Opera with Renato Cellini conducting. And again, this is on VAI, one of the recordings that they had. This was recorded back in April of 1960.
Wow.
And you say, well, it's only a single CD. No, it's actually 2 CDs in here. They have. So again, New Orleans had some incredible recordings that they had mastered into CDs, and we sold those at the record shop. And I should tell you, this was an unusual record shop, Smith's Records, and I mentioned it because we were noted for not only Broadway. I mean, a lot of people knew about the show tunes, but we were noted for our opera and our classical. We had the entire store laid out by record labels. So if you came in and said, hey, I'd like to have a Beethoven Symphony No. 9, I'd go over to the Schwann catalog. I'd look up Beethoven, I'd look up Symphony, I'd look up No. 9 numerically. And then I would say, well, would you want the Fritz Reiner? We have that one over here. Would you like the Von Karajan with the Vienna? Would you like the Von Karajan with the Berlin? Or perhaps you'd like the one on Telarc, et cetera. We would give them anything that they wanted at different price points, et cetera. But the point being that it was laid out like no other record store that I know of in the United States, because we went by labels. So we would put all the Deutsche Grammophon in order. we put all the Phillips in order, all the London in order, and then all the operas would be done alphabetically. And so as we did more and more operas in terms of CDs, that's, the later years, we started to do those alphabetically because it's easier to go to all the different Samsons or all the different Tannhausers or what have you. So again, I was exposed to this a long, long time, but I have to say it took me a while. Unlike you, who was exposed to it, it took me a while to come to it because I was really a pop guy. I did the oldies show. I knew all the New Orleans music. I mean, if anybody asked me about, when certain songs came out in New Orleans, et cetera, I would be able to show them. I used to actually sell records. You don't know who these people are, but to the meters, they would come in the record shop to get old New Orleans stuff. I would sell them stuff that they had actually recorded years ago that they couldn't get anymore,
Oh, wow.
So very interesting. And we were noted for, for that, but also as I mentioned earlier, the fact is we had quite a bit of mail order business, and people like Stephen Sondheim, John Kander of Kander and Ebb fame, they would get stuff from us, because when you're that famous, you don't go into New York, because most of the people don't know who you are and they don't care. And, and it's like, where this is? Oh yeah, it's somewhere over there. They point out. So to get back to you though, you're a young lady, you're going to think about doing Samson and Dalila for your professional career. That you find out that maybe that's not the best way to go. What did you do to actually get trained? Where did you go for your voice lessons? And when did your career start to blossom?
So for undergrad, I went to the University of Texas at Arlington, and I had a nice New Orleans connection then, actually, because on the jazz faculty was Adonis Rose, who, just got a fancy new job here in the city, has, a million records with New Orleans Jazz Orchestra and things. So I was always hearing about it. I would sneak off to his concerts when he was playing downtown in Fort Worth. So that connection was always strong. But in any case, for myself, after undergrad in Texas, I headed to Manhattan School of Music in New York. And then a couple years of young artist programs in Miami and California, and then headed to Europe for full time.
Yeah. Like many people, and I mentioned to you a couple of names of people who were customers of mine. Shirley Verrett, who actually went on cruises with my mom, and Gail Gilmore, who also, similar to you, had a career in Europe, in Germany in particular, which she has really not deviated from. She's really happy to be in Europe and be a great star there. And again, both of them were from New Orleans. Although I think Gail was maybe born maybe in Washington and then came to live in New Orleans and was brought up here, but certainly had her exposure to being brought, I think, at Xavier first off, and then having a career from there. And of course, there's so many people that have come out of New Orleans lately. Alfred Walker, who you may know, he great voice, and I believe he's coming back for the next opera after you in the spring, right?
Well, he's going to be in Samson and Dalila.
Is he going to be in Samson? Okay, he's going to be in Samson.
He's my high priest. We
okay, he's going to be the high priest. So anyway, I know he's coming. I just didn't remember exactly. And again, you've got a number of other people who have established themselves recently. I mentioned Brian Hemel as well. Who's established some status as a person of the French repertoire as well. Do you happen to like the French repertoire particularly more so than the German? I know you were doing Lieder, but I didn't hear you do a lot at the Opera Guild of French. So I'm wondering, are you more towards the German or more towards the French repertoire, or do you like the Italian?
I've sung quite a few French roles, but they tend to be, Verdi wrote many shows that were originally in French. So I've sung Don Carlos in French. I've sung La Favorita as La Favorite in Italy, but in French. And I've sung lots of chansons, like in recital, French pieces. But for some reason, I haven't done a lot of truly French operas. Please excuse my dog as she has adventures.
No problem. No problem. We love dogs. We love dogs. So in terms of your exposure to it, I mean, it's not that you haven't been exposed to it. I mean, it's just that you haven't been called upon to do a lot of it because it's not been called for.
Right.
So what is there a go-to for you that you really love when you just when you want to relax, not necessarily work, but you love to listen to? Is there a particular repertoire that you really enjoy?
You know, I feel like I used to listen to a lot of classical music for fun when I was training. But now when my whole day is classical music, I don't listen to a lot of things for myself for fun anymore because, you know, that's what I hear all day, and I don't want to relax with what I do all day long. In terms of what do I love, I certainly love I my voice and Verdi get along very well. I'm just starting to do Wagnerian things. I'm gonna
Oh, that's okay. No. What about
would you like to meet my baby?
Sure. Maybe is it a she?
Yeah. Come here. Oh, now she's decided to be shy.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh no, she's scratching. She'll come later.
Okay. No, I wonder about you know, like some of the Verdi things that you know, like you mentioned Don Carlo. I'm trying to remember, like La Forza del Destino. Is there? I think that there was a big role there too, right? That
yeah, there's Preziosilla. I've sung her. I've sung that in Toulouse actually. That was my one time in Toulouse. Okay, this is cool.
Oh, hello. Can
Folks,
you see us? Hey there.
She's 13.
Oh, okay.
She travels everywhere.
That's a big girl. Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I've sung Forza in Toulouse. And I've done actually most of the Verdis. And I'm just starting to do the Das Rheingold and Walküre.
Well, yeah, and I've got some pictures, you know, that you were very generous to send. So I think we'll maybe do a leaping off with some of those first before we get to some of the other ones. You have to tell me a little bit about this production, obviously.
Yeah, that's the Das Rheingold that I did earlier this year with the LA Phil. So that's Ryan's.
And you're playing which role?
I'm playing Fricka.
Fricka.
Yeah.
Ah.
And
that's a wild costume.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah. And again, that's also spectacular. You know, with the eye patch, etc. For obviously.
Yes. It was almost all of our debuts. That's Ryan Speedo Green's debut as Wotan. That was my first Fricka. It was great. It was my first time with Maestro Dudamel. So it was very
do you think you're going to gravitate towards some of the heavier roles later on, or?
I'm really trying to keep things balanced. The good thing about I started my career in Antwerp in Belgium, really professionally, and I was ensemble there, so it's kind of you sing whatever they give you. And my very first season, I had 5 different languages. I sang Czech, I sang Russian, I sang Italian, I sang German, I sang French. So, you know, it runs the gamut. And so then it was a very popular house. That year, I think it won Best Opera House in the World. And so everybody would come through there to see the shows. And so they would see me in such a wildly vast array of repertoire. So now my seasons are just crazy looking because if you see me in contemporary, you're like, oh, she's a contemporary specialist. If you see me in Verdi, you're like, oh, she's a Verdi specialist. If you see me in, oh, she's a, you know, one of my coaches just calls me a chameleon because whatever I'm doing, it's like, hello, here I am.
Dangerous roles, aren't you doing in Amsterdam or possibly in Belgium? Because those roles could actually be Flemish. Okay, so bum. Here we go. This is not. This is again. I saw this picture. I said, "My goodness, what? Now, what are you doing? This is Malcolm X. Is that what that is?"
Yeah,
So
that's
when did you do that? Where was that?
that was at the Metropolitan Opera. That was
Wow.
I think November and December of 2023.
So that was after the pandemic,
Right.
and we all know 2022 was also 2021, 2022 was a very turbulent time in the country with a lot of the protests, et cetera. And so doing Malcolm X probably was a very special time to be able to do that role.
It was special. And it was also maybe the most packed I've ever seen the Met.
Really?
It was all of a sudden, all of the celebrities were like, "What are you doing this weekend?" "Oh, I'm going to the Metropolitan Opera to see Malcolm X." It was the hot thing to do. It was the hot ticket in town, and I loved that. I loved that for opera to be like the most popular thing that the cool kids are doing.
I'm trying to see that this is another version of something that you were doing. I assume a concert version of something.
Yes, that's a concert version. That's in Antwerp. That was my very first season there.
You don't remember what it was you were doing, probably.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was millions of things on the program, so I don't know which moment that was that they caught.
That was the one we mentioned earlier, and then there's a lovely shot of you. Go look at that. I mean, now that's a professional shot, obviously, that they're taking.
Right.
It's one of those not posed shots that they do, and it takes like 5 hours for them to do the not posed shot, right?
Correct.
So,
correct.
Understood. And then this is a nice headshot, although it's
Right.
a little too much head there for us to it obliterates both of us while it's in there. I really appreciate you supplying some of these, because I can go through some of these and really get an idea about some of the length and breadth of some of the performances. This is another one that I don't understand it too much. It looked to me like it was maybe something Spanish, perhaps, or maybe Italian Renaissance. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that is La Favorite.
Ah, very good.
So that was
the French version of La Favorita.
Correct.
And and you did this a few years back?
Yes, that was my first ever lead.
Wow.
At a professional company. So it was very.
And who is the young lady next to you? It's all right. It's all right. Do you know what a character is? No. Okay.
It's funny. I actually just spoke with her husband.
You'll remember. Don't worry
Names. I have incredible short-term memory, so I memorize or I learn at least very quickly. But once I have used that information, it is so far
flies away. Now you did do this is I know a photo it identifies as Aida, but I have to, because this is the most modern looking Aida I've ever seen.
Welcome to life in Europe.
So they cast it with a modern Egyptian kind of look with leather.
Well, it's not leather. It's just a really well-fitted jacket for that. And they tried to make it kind of, you weren't sure where it was. It was kind of a military state. You could see Radames behind me in his military uniform. But it was definitely trying to take Egypt out of the conversation and just making it a love triangle.
Which it is.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
where was that exactly? Where?
That was in Copenhagen.
Copenhagen. Ah. So yeah, I marvel at some of these pictures, because it's showing us a lot of the length and breadth of what you've done in the past. I've got also some great pictures that I took at your performance last Tuesday at the New Orleans Opera Guild. Again, we're talking with Raehann Bryce-Davis, who is the star of Samson at Dalila, coming up on November 8th and the 10th at the Mahalia Jackson Theater for the Performing Arts. And I should mention that if you want to get tickets, I'm going to let that run for a while. NewOrleansOpera.org is where you need to go. And, if you want to pick up some tickets, if you already haven't gotten, if you don't have season subscriptions, then that's where you want to go and try to pick up your tickets, because, it's going to be a special night and a special afternoon. And let's face it, especially on the afternoon on Sunday, the Saints aren't doing that great. So there's no excuse now not to go to see the opera. Again, if you have any comments, we would love to hear from you. This show will be archived and will run again. We'll be promoting it throughout the next week or so. I'll be talking about it on my own program on Stepping Out with Peggy Scott Laborde on WYS. So people who hadn't had a chance to come in tonight and didn't get enough advance notice, because we really put this together at the last kind of minute. I'm sorry to say, but it's one of those things that I had another possibility of another group coming on, and I didn't want to promote you without mentioning them as well, but they decided not to. And again, we'll just leave that as a lost opportunity, but hopefully people will have an opportunity next week. I'm going to have a really fun show, I hope, with Anaïs St. John, who is a local performer. She went to the Yale Cabaret years ago for their conference that they have. She's done all kinds of roles, including recently she did a Lulu White performance. Lulu White was one of the madams who ran one of the brothels, if you will, in the old Storyville area. And she's done several other pieces, such as Donna Summer, and she's had an opportunity to do a number of really wonderful performers. I think she's got a performance coming up that she's going to want to promote. So we'll talk about that next week. But we hope that people will have an opportunity to see her next week as well. And again, that'll be the 4th of November, and then your performance will be 4 days later, the first of the two, on the 8th. And do you know whether or not they're going to have because I think weren't you involved with the talk back that they had prior to the last group, or was that? I'm trying to remember who did that. You probably didn't. Don't worry about it then. I'm trying to remember who they had somebody doing some of the pre-concert talk for one of the shows. And I know you were in New Orleans. I didn't know whether or not you had done anything. So besides the event you did on Tuesday, there was another event on Thursday. I didn't get to go because I had a conflict that night. Sometimes the theater critic has to go to see theater. So I apologize. So what did you do Tuesday night? Was that an introduction for Lila Palmer, the new executive director, artistic director for the opera, or what was it?
In the morning, we did a master class with 5 of the universities from around town: Loyola, Xavier. I should stop Tulane. I should stop naming because I'm gonna forget the other 2. But it was great to hear some young talent. Some of it just crazy incredible, and I can't wait to see where some of those singers are gonna go.
Yeah. Was it Tulane, Loyola, Xavier, and possibly Delgado, or
maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll go with that. Could have been UNO too, the University of New Orleans as well. But yeah. So there's all of the major universities. So we don't leave anything out. But and then what happened in the evening? You said you had the master class then, and then what happened?
And then we had the concert, and then that for me was enough for one day. I had dinner with Lila and her husband and my mom. But that was it. That was 2 events a day is my max. I'm not on your level of.
That's true. I do amaze some people. They can never figure me out. But this is from Tuesday night. This was you, and it looks a little bit like you're engrossed in the performance, and you were. And again, that's a little bit earlier in the evening. And by the way, the dress you mentioned is designed by.
Yes, by my husband, Alan Virgo.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's spectacular. I mean, not everybody gets to have a husband who's designed for Guess and Baby Fat back in the day, and Macy's and Marc Jacobs and all kinds of folks. So I happen to have that wonderful husband that sits beside me in the living room.
I love that particular shot there too.
That's a beautiful shot.
That was the end of your concert. You were like very happy it was over, but very fulfilled by the fact that you did a great job, and the applause was was pretty evident that you had made an impression. So I have to say congratulations on that. A couple more shots here. Maybe you can fill me in on that. This is this is kind of a goofy shot. Where was that taken? Obviously in Europe.
Yeah, that's in Nuremberg. I just like to, especially when I was younger.
That's called sassy. Just being sassy.
Yeah, I like just meeting photographers, especially in this day and age of social media.
Yeah.
You gotta post some fun and exciting things. And so I very often, whenever I'm in town, if I meet a photographer, we just go out and make some fun shots. So like that one that you saw with the blonde hair that I was rocking a few shots ago, and this one.
How about that one?
This one as well. Yeah, that's in Fort Worth. That's the museum in Fort Worth, and that's a fabulous dress that I bought in South Africa.
I was about to say, did your husband design that? Because
no, I wish.
It almost reminds me of like peacock feathers, and the design is very ornate.
Yeah,
very nice. I'm sorry your husband didn't design that, because I would have told what a great job he did on that one too.
That's true. Yeah, well, the dress I'll wear for the concert will also be his design, so you'll see another of his goodies.
So let me try to get into your head a little bit, because I don't get opera singers that often in the show, and I really would like to kind of get your take on this. I was involved obviously with a record shop that specialized in opera, classical music, etc. And even back then, when we closed in 1996, things were starting to sort of slow down for opera. They were starting to reissue a lot of the older operas onto the compact disc format for the first time, but then they started to delete them, and a lot of the things that they used to put out, the record clubs that you used to have, the RCA Record Club, etc. They used to have lots of opportunities to get lots of recordings through those clubs on opera, and all of a sudden they started to get less and less. When you wanted to go out and get something in a store, you wouldn't see any opera anymore. The opportunity to see a lot of different operas became less and less. And I'm wondering, do you see that trend continuing today? How do we get young people exposed to opera if we don't really, have the recordings out there that are being made to get them, exposed to it, basically?
Well, I think we have no shortage of recordings when we have like Spotify and Apple Music. Everything that's ever been recorded is at your fingertips.
But the question is are the full-length operas there, or are they just the arias?
No, the full-length operas are there, the whole CDs on YouTube, their whole productions. And especially places like Europe, they're doing a really great job of hiring production companies to record productions that they're doing. I just did a Rusalka in Amsterdam, that they have a full production crew. You have your little microphone. It doesn't work for the house, but it works to record studio quality audio.
Really?
For the whole production. And the company is called Eurovision. Even from here, you can sign in and watch whole productions from Vienna, from Lisbon, from all over the place. And the quality is all equally high, because it's the one production company that's going around and videoing everyone. So I think that's so exciting. Europe has always been more experimental with art, which is therefore more attractive to young people. I think America now is having a huge renaissance in young people that are interested in opera. Like I was saying, things like that Malcolm X movement, but also we're having
Terrence Blanchard, the that was out. That got tremendous reviews.
Huge reviews.
Yeah,
huge reviews. He and he's New Orleans based. I understand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He and Donald Harrison Jr. Started out just like Winton and Branford started out playing jazz together. With a big jazz band. They filled in after Winton and Branford left. Donald Harrison and Terrence Blanchard filled in for them, and they went on the road with the same group and again established their careers, and then eventually recorded their own things together, and then broke off as solo artists.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he had the huge first debut of a Black composer at the Metropolitan Opera, which anytime you present opera in a way that people don't expect it, they get very interested. And I don't think that traditional opera goers expected it. I don't think they expected that opera could be of wild influence. If you go on TikTok, the things that are the most original and crazy that you wouldn't see otherwise, those are the things that people love. I had a video. I have a video. I wish I could have sent you a link so you could share it with the viewers. But it's we were doing a production of The Magic Flute in Antwerp, my first season there. And we were the three ladies, and we were these kind of like water nymphs.
Okay.
And we just kind of floated in the water. And then there was really water on stage. And so when it was Christmas time, they asked us if we would just sing some of We Wish You a Merry Christmas in character as the water nymphs. So we're like, okay, we're like in our dressing room and we're like, there's no water here. Oh, but we have a shower. So the three of us like all bunched into the tiny shower. And we did our weird like water movements, and we did, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, this weird crazy thing. And then we just posted it, and nobody really cared. It was fine. It got like a normal amount of likes. A few years later, I posted the video again on Christmas Eve on my Instagram. Why did it get almost 1 million views?
Really?
All over the world. And people were like, what is that? It was just so weird. And it's just opera singers singing We Wish You a Merry Christmas in a shower. It was just weird. And when you do these things that are just off the beaten path and fun and fresh and well done, like you can't underestimate well done. People know when something is quality, and so much of pop culture is getting less quality and less production. We're some of the only people out there that are still, regularly putting on full thing music videos. In the olden days, people used to spend thousands and thousands or millions of dollars on those things, and now they're just getting more basic and more whatever. So when we as opera creators have a whole industry of creatives that have skill that is trained for decades, and people experience it, they're like, but that's amazing. And we see it in my friend is a drag queen named Creatine Price. And yeah, she's like really bulky, and she does her thing. But so she just went on France's Got Talent or something like that, singing an aria from Adriana Lecouvreur. People went nuts. They're weeping. They're losing their minds. And it's just people, if you put it in front of them in a fresh, unexpected way, the same operatic, beautiful sound that we're trained to create, people fall in love with it.
Yeah.
But you just have to not let them think that they're watching this very stiff thing from their grandparents' generation. If you put it in their worlds, they will love it.
I know that as a person who was involved with promotion of the three tenors, that was the World Cup. That was the first time they actually put all three of them together in popular song. They were not doing a straight, opera repertoire. They were doing a lot of different things. They did, some Italian you know, the different songs that people would do in Italy and Sicily, etc. And then they did some of the you know, the things from the operas, you know, such as from Tosca, etc. And then they ended up with what was it? The big thing that they did at the end of with three of them do a version of something that was only done usually for one voice. They all three, and again, the collaboration was something that people hadn't seen or been exposed to, and all of a sudden, opera became, you know, in vogue. It was, and the same thing. Freddie Mercury, when he was at the Olympics, right, with Montserrat Caballé.
Yes,
that was. I mean, who would have thought that, right?
Right.
So, you know, and there's so many people that will use opera from time to time to kind of like make a statement. And I know that there was a popular artist, really a new age, who used Madame Butterfly. You know, if you remember a few years ago, I mean, probably 20, 25 years now, but people heard that and they were there. What is that? You know, and they couldn't understand that it was Madame Butterfly. So, you know, again, it's great to see when, and you're probably right that maybe with the internet, maybe with Spotify, maybe with some of these other things, but to me, the recordings aren't there. Maybe because we're now in a digital world and this rules everything. You know, that maybe that's the way to go. But to me, you know, looking at something on this as opposed to being able to listen to it on either even your headphones or in with the big speakers and being to the artists, you know, to me is the only way that I prefer to go.
Yeah.
Rather than on the because that's, I don't know how Spotify is. I mean, are they recordings really superb in terms of the quality? I mean,
they're pretty top quality. If you have some great headphones, you can hear.
That's for me the way to go. You know, the head for the noise canceling or whatever you got. I've always been sort of a fan of that, but again, I've maintained my hearing, you know, through the years. I have to say, a lot of people aren't as fortunate, and I don't know whether or not they went to some of those clubs and they were banging out with it, whatever. But you know, I've always been very fortunate, knock wood, that my hearing has been you know, with me for a while, and I hope that I maintain it, because too many of us, you know, suffer hearing when we get into our later years.
True.
You know, and you can't hear the lower registers or you can't hear the higher, and you know, it gets to be a problem for some people. And so, you know, unless you're a dog, and then, you know, not a problem. You know, you can hear anything. My question, I guess, you know, for you is you're in Houston now. What are you doing in Houston? What's the role you're doing?
So I'm doing well, if I can just respond to something quickly that you said about the hearing, because that for singers is something that is huge. We're performing at top volume for, you know, like almost 4,000 people here, like here in Houston, and behind you or beside you are these voices that are the largest voices also singing right in your ear. So the hearing is a huge issue in opera and just classical music. And
I hadn't even thought about that, you know, because really, you know, you're thinking that the way that they're projecting out to the audience, and not necessarily, but obviously if they're singing into you in a love, duet, they obviously are singing right into your ear. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah. I mean, there are angles that you can, like, you know, do to try to avoid that, but everybody's not thinking about that. I have here in this show, Morris Robinson, one of the loudest voices there is, stands right behind me, and he has such great fun to like come down and go, and he thinks it's the funniest thing in the world, and I'm just like, stay in character. Anyway, what am I doing here? I'm doing Il Trovatore, Azucena.
You're doing Azucena, okay.
Right.
And of course, anybody who's ever seen Night at the Opera knows what the Marx Brothers did to that opera. You know, but it's the same thing. When people get exposed to opera in this country, the first thing they say, Night at the Opera, or maybe the second thing they say, because the first time usually they say, you know, The Rabbit of Seville, or What's Opera Doc.
Right.
You know, those are the ones that you know, really get the early stage, you know, kids exposure to the opera.
You know, I think, yeah, certainly my generation as well. Bugs Bunny was, you know, one of our our introductions. I feel like opera today is being brought to the new generation very strongly through like the queer community. In drag, opera is huge.
Really?
In RuPaul, just this last year, Safira Cristal, opera, has studied opera, and that's her whole gig. That she released a music video of O Mio Bambino Caro. It's just and it's Laverne Cox, one of the biggest
Yes.
celebrities that there is.
Yes.
She's recording all kinds of opera. She has a summertime.
Really?
She
Wow.
has Der Tod und das Mädchen, the Schubert song. So it's like opera is the biggest, most dramatic thing you can create.
Yeah.
And so, of course, with some of our super colorful and fabulous queer people in the community, that is a huge way to create something that is authentically them. And so it's such a huge opportunity. And I think they're a huge part of why opera is becoming so popular today for the younger generation.
So you think that the pendulum has swung the other way, that it's becoming more popular than ever, rather than losing popularity, even though it's not being sold in stores anymore?
It's not mainstream, but it's coming. It's having a moment. I think Forbes magazine just did an article that was talking about opera is having a resurgence and a moment. Like it's coming back. It's coming back. It's still a bit of fringy. Like, well, I do opera, and they're like, oh, well, that's interesting.
So again, you're going to be appearing in Samson and Dalila, or Samson and Dalila, and again, it's going to be on November the 8th at I believe 7:30 is when it starts, right? And then on Sunday afternoon, the 10th of November, the show starts, I think, at 2:30, maybe. I don't think it's at 2, but I'll have to go back and check. But let's just say it's at 2:30, just to make it easy. But don't get there at 2:30. Don't take my word for it. Get there at 2 if you have to. And again, are they doing a talk back before each performance?
I'm not positive about that.
They usually do. They usually about an hour ahead of time. They usually will do some sort of a lecture about the work. So hopefully they'll talk a little bit about the New Orleans premiere. Again, 1893. I think the work actually began in Germany in 1877. So it took a while for it to get to the United States. But it's interesting that a good number of North American premieres were held right in this city, the first city of opera, New Orleans. Before they got to the Met or some of the other places that you would have expected it would have gone. And again, because we are New Orleans, and because we have that special affinity with artists like Tennessee Williams and Streetcar Named Desire, the second city that Streetcar Named Desire premiered in was supposed to be Dallas, but we got the scoop on Dallas because San Francisco did it, and somehow or other there was a week or two that they were off before they presented in Dallas, and New Orleans scooped up, and we had the second time that they presented that and matter of fact, Andre Previn was supposed to be in the audience. Unfortunately, he's deceased now, but he was supposed to be here that night. He did not make it for some reason or another. But again, a fabulous opportunity for our New Orleans opera to be able to hear you. And again, you mentioned Alfred Walker. Who's the Samson in this?
Oh, he is a fabulous tenor named Lemmy Pulliam. I think his claim to fame, he's classically trained, of course, but he had gone on and he was having a different career. And then he performed Nessun Dorma online. And it was just one of the most glorious sounds you had ever heard. And it spread like wildfire. We talk about, opera having a moment. Just that didn't need to be updated, anything. That just sound coming out of your rinky little dinky phone is incredible. I mean, some people will say that it's a sound similar to Pavarotti and blah 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 blah. Everybody likes to say it sounds like whatever, you know, it sounds like Lemmy Pulliam, but it's just glorious, a glorious voice. I think that that video has to have been seen like over 1 million times by now. And now he had his LA Opera debut recently. He's a regular with the Cleveland Orchestra. He's all over the country performing now. Michelle Obama is a huge fan of his.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I know we only have a little bit of time. I guess I should ask, you know, because, you know, it wasn't all that long ago. I mean, really, we're talking about what, 1935, that, you know, Marian Anderson wasn't allowed to sing, you know, she had to sing on the Washington Mall, as I recall. And several women from, I think, the Daughters of the American Revolution made sure that that happened.
Mhm.
So, you know, there were people always supporting artists of color, you know, to give them an opportunity to perform. Are we now, you know, seeing a lot more artists who are artists of color are being allowed to perform more frequently on the scene? Are you seeing that now, or are we more or less the same?
I think we're certainly seeing a lot more singers than I even used to see in the earlier days of my career. Um, and we're starting to move around from the tokenization, like there can be one singer of color or one Asian or one Latino and one, you know, we're moving away from that, and we're trying to create more diverse stages that look like the communities around them. And I think one of the most interesting parts of the trends is also making sure that the people creating the shows are also diverse. You know, we need, just like we needed Samson and Dalila created back then, we need our modern love stories being created today by Asian composers. There's an M Butterfly that's updated now with my friend countertenor Kangmin Justin Kim. You know, and so nobody would expect the Butterfly to be sung by a male in drag.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's by composer Huang Ro. We have, you know, the Malcolm X by Anthony Davis. Companies are starting to catch the drift. I know in New Orleans they're doing they're doing a cook-off, I think in December. That's by a Black woman. She Shall Not Be Moved with Deborah Deep. And so I love it. It's a beautiful season that we're having here in New Orleans, from the traditional Tosca to a Samson and Delilah to something just premiered this year in America. I love that variety, and it's site specific. I think it's at the Food and Drinks Museum.
Okay, SoFab probably, right?
Yeah. So it's great. Lila Palmer's bringing so many fresh ideas, fresh voices to the city, and I'm very excited. I'm going to spend Christmas in North Texas, so I'm certainly hopping over to see what that cook-off.
Well, we will love to have you, and I will let you in on a conversation that I had with Lila. I interviewed her a few weeks. The first thing I told her was I knew she was, you know, familiar with John and Mark Adamo and John Corgliano. And I said, you know, we're now on the 30th anniversary of the Ghost of Versailles, and I really want to see Ghost of Versailles here in New Orleans. So what are we going to do to make that happen? She said she's going to try. So, you know, I you know, hope that'll happen. I told her I'll even help send some money her way to make it happen. I don't know that I have the entire amount of money for the budget, but, you know, I'm going to do what I can. But I think that New Orleans has always been, especially with Wagner and stuff, has always been a town that rises to really great challenges in opera, and we've done a great job. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do. I want to thank you, Raehann, for being with us tonight. Again, the New Orleans Opera production of Samson and Dalila, November the 8th and November the 10th. And I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. But Raehann, you stay on. Just give me a second. I'll say goodnight to you privately. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with me tonight and being here. Again, our program is broadcast the NOLA Theater Folk Facebook group on the theatercriticism.com Facebook page. My own channel. This is NOLA Theater Talk. My name is Alan Smason. I want to thank you for being with me. Next week, Anais St. John starting up a show that's going to be very interesting. We know that you'll want to see and listen to hear what she has to say about an upcoming production. And I'll see you at the theater.